Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flying Over 50 at Any Age. I'm Cyrus Webb, joined by my co host, Makeda Smith, the
Hey,
author of the
everybody.
best selling book by the same name. I want to welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. Also, we welcome those tuning in on Instagram as well. We're going to go ahead and bring in our friends over on Amazon Live so we can get into today's broadcast here. Exciting one for you guys. If you guys have not gotten your copy of Makeda's book, now's the perfect time, and we're live on Amazon Live for Flying Over 50 at Any Age. I'm excited you guys can join us. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, make sure you guys do click that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by my friend Makeda Smith that this series is based on. We've been going week by week discussing this book, but also being able to get her own reflections and the lessons she wants you all to take away from it. Makeda, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Cyrus?
Doing amazing. So good to be able to be with you for day 8 in your book and week 8 of our series. This is a really important one, Makeda. I was saying to Makeda earlier, everyone, that the topic is miracles or coincidences. She's going to be reading it for us here in a bit. But what I love about this is I think everyone can relate to this. I think we all have had these situations that we say, how did this happen? How am I going to get out of this situation?
Yeah.
Or can I make it out of this particular situation? And then when something happens, what that means for us and how does that reinvigorate us? But Keita, before we get started with today, I'm
Mhm.
curious. I was just saying to you, of course, we're in week number 8. We're 2 months into our series. Is this becoming more and more comfortable for you?
It's becoming a little more comfortable. I'm getting used to my weekly dates with you, Cyrus. I get to dress up, shut
Love it.
everything down, turn my phones off, focus.
Well, look, I've been enjoying it as well, and I hope our audience has too. We have something special for you guys in April, everyone. We're going to be actually together live for a special episode of Flying Over 50 in the Age. We'll tell you more information about that next week. But Makita, this topic today, again, it goes perfectly in line with the message I've been taking away week by week, and that is a flow in movement.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times for people that are out there right now, and it's appropriate we're having this conversation as we're getting ready to wrap up this month. A lot of people are feeling stuck and they're having that sense
Mhm.
of uncertainty. As we look at this week's message, though, we're able to see how you dealt with a challenging time. Makita's going to do the honors of reading for us miracles or coincidences. Makita, take it away.
Okay. This week is day 8, chapter 8, miracles or coincidences. When I started my business some 35 years ago, my one goal was to make it past the 5 year mark, since I had read that most small businesses don't make it past that timeline. 35 years later, I am in awe that I'm still here. But how, Sway? How? My answer would be that I'm still here and thriving because of miraculous grace. I can honestly say that unlike my early childhood, which is peppered with memories of the lights and heat being cut off at times, I have never had my utilities cut off or my cell phone disconnected. But oh, I came close on several occasions. I remember one time that my cell phone, this was years ago, I remember one time that my cell phone was due for disconnection in maybe 48 hours, and I had no money coming in sight. I remember it was a Friday night, and I was nervously dreading the cutoff day and not knowing how I was going to avoid it. The very next day, a Saturday, I got a phone call from a potential client. They were brothers and business partners who lived up north in Oakland. It just so happens they were in LA for the weekend and wanted to drop off cash to me to secure my PR services while they were in town. What you say? Those young brothers came out to my house, dropped off cash to me, and headed on their way. Never in a million years would I have imagined someone showing up at my house on a Saturday with money to hire me. That memory is one of many miracles that have blessed me along my journey. Some people call them coincidences. I call them miracles. Do you believe in miracles? What are some coincidences you may have overlooked that were miracles in the making? Miracles reaffirm that we float on the extensions of grace.
Wow.
And I want to add, the reason I say that that was years ago was really decades ago, because now like cell phone bills aren't like what they used to be. Back in
Mm-hmm.
the day, cell phone bills were like $200 and $300 a month because cell phones were brand new. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really a really stressful situation because a cell phone bill was probably like higher, like one of your highest utility bills back in the day.
Yeah.
It was a different kind of thing than it is now. Now they got throwaway phones, all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of plans. So it really was a different kind of situation. So it really was miraculous.
Yeah. And there's so much in this message, Makeda. I know you say, oh, here you go. but when I was reading it myself, to me there's so many things here. But I want to start off with breaking generational curses.
Oh, okay.
Because I think for so many people, the reason why, Makeda, they think they can't do something is because they've never seen anyone in their family do
Mhm,
it or break out of it. They may have the dream of doing it,
mhm.
but they've never seen it, so they don't know that it's possible. I want to ask you about that first. What was it like for you to reflect on what you saw in your household and then what your fear was as an adult?
That's so interesting because that's so you always like touch on stuff, Cyrus. The breaking of generational curses is like so crucial because even though I only mentioned it in like one sentence in that chapter,
Hmm.
that really is a deep undertone because coming up, which was what that was 60 what 50 years ago, like
Hmm.
literally I remember we would come home from school and the lights would be off for like the next 2 or 3 days and then the lights would come on. So as children we didn't really understand what was going on, but we knew something was going on. Or you come home and the heat is off and your mom says you got to wear your jackets for the next couple of days. They just you just roll with it. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting because like I said, as children you may not understand what's going on, but it's making an imprint in your beingness, and it's affecting you on a subconscious level.
Hmm.
So it was really important to me as I became a parent of my own, and had my own children, the whole thing of providing for them and always making sure that all their needs was met was crucially important to me. And I guess, which I didn't realize until like decades later, um what I was doing was breaking a generational curse, because the
Yeah.
generational curse was just like you struggle, you struggle, you struggle, stuff gets cut off, gets cut
Mhm.
back on. But I was of this mode of thinking like I don't want my daughters to ever come home and they're wondering how come they can't watch TV.
Yeah.
So the breaking of generational curses is a key underlying tone of that chapter. But then it takes you into how do we break generational curses, and do we believe we can break generational curses, and are we even conscious of the generational curses that we carry? So yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought about it the first time I read it. I was like, huh. So because I can imagine, we talk about trauma and we use that word so loosely,
Hmm.
but that could be a form of trauma for someone.
Yeah.
Talk about PTSD of what they've experienced in childhood, and then thinking, okay, now I'm in this situation, and depending on how you felt about, and I'm not saying you in this situation, but
Hmm.
I'm saying just our audience, how you may have felt toward your parents. How did we get in that situation? You could be asking yourself the same question: how did I get in this situation?
Hmm.
So that's why I thought about that breaking of generational curses. That leads me to the second thing in here, Makeda, and that is the commentary you give about entrepreneurship. I think a lot of times in 2025, and I want to say hey to Sharon Marie over there on IG. Good to see you. Dr. Calandra, hello to you over there on IG as well. Um, Entrepreneurship is made to look very sexy, right? On social media, everyone, you're doing this and you're flying here and driving there and going to events and all of this stuff. But we both know it is not.
I was gonna say those are new entrepreneurs with social media. We was entrepreneuring back when folks wasn't even calling it entrepreneur. They wasn't even celebrating it. They just looked at us like we were crazy.
Right. And that's the point I wanted to get to. You saw so many people who were there when you started that are no longer there today. I've seen it in my industry.
Mhm.
What was it like for you to think about how, in many ways, the odds were against you statistically, and how, as you mentioned in this chapter, 3 decades later, still being here?
What was your question, Cyrus?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was it like for you to?
You be taking my brain, my brain, my brain.
What was it like? Hey, you gave me those. What you talking about, Willis?
I know, right? What you talking about, Cyrus? What was
So,
the
what was it
question?
like for you to think about statistically how you shouldn't have succeeded, but then here you were 30 years later, still being here?
I don't know. Is it a coincidence or is it a miracle?
Oh my goodness! I love it. I
No, I
love.
mean, really, when you think about it, I got to ask: is it a coincidence or is it a miracle? And it brings us back to the theme of the
Mhm.
chapter. I
Yeah.
don't know. Early on, when I started on my like personal awakening self-realization journey, I came
Mhm.
across this term called divine order.
Mm.
And the teaching was you have to believe that everything that happens from the good to the bad is in divine order because everything plays out for a bigger picture that you may not be aware of, but like everything is in divine order.
Mhm.
So, which brings us to coincidences. I remember back in the day, when I always say back in the day, I'm talking like 30, 40 years ago,
Mhm.
people would say to me, oh, that was a coincidence. And I used to always say to people, I don't believe in coincidences. That was just divine order,
Yeah.
because it happened the way it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so, if you really take heed to that everything is in divine order and you acknowledge that when things happen that seem like coincidences, there really is no such thing as a coincidence. It's divine order. And the
Yeah.
divine order also takes me, it also, like, when you look at the picture that I have for that chapter, it's a picture of the goddess Maat, and she has her wings out. And I honestly believe that I have angels. Well, we all have angels around us, but everybody has different belief systems. So my belief is that I have personal angels that are guiding me and they're keeping me in the flow of divine order.
Mhm.
So, which brings us like back. Okay, so this was my thinking back in the 80s, 90s, back when I first started my business. And here we are in 2025.
Mhm.
And sometimes it really gets overwhelming because it seems like the world is about to collapse. There's so much, there's just so many odds against us. But you can look at things that way, or you can look at things a different way. So, like sometimes, even in my own life, when I get stressed out these days, or I'm like, oh my God, like what's next, or how am I going to get from A to B? I have to think about the things I wrote in this book, and I have to think about, and we all can do this. Think about where we were back then and how many less resources we had. Like back then, I had a cell phone bill that was probably $200 or $300 a month, and I had limited number of minutes on that cell phone.
I
Remember?
remember those days. I
Yeah,
remember.
remember those days, and it's like
Mhm.
how we made it through those times with less resources,
Mhm.
and today we have so many more resources at our fingertips. We can focus on the resources that we have to get us to the next level, which these resources are really blessings, or we can focus on the negatives of what's out there against us. So it's where you put your attention. You could focus, like if you focus on the what you don't have, then you're going to manifest more of what you don't have.
Yeah.
So it like a lot of this, I don't know if I'm going off topic, but
No, you're fine.
a lot of it is really about us training our brains, because how we train our brains to perceive reality is the reality that we create, which again brings us back to, is it a coincidence or is it a miracle?
Yeah.
If you just say everything's a coincidence, then you're really energetically you're taking away from that miraculous thing that happened. But when you say, oh my God, that was a miracle, then
Hmm.
like it just raises the vibration, it raises the energy, it gives you the faith and the hope and the inspiration that you can make it to the next step.
Such a great point. I love that. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Flying Over 50 at Any Age with Makeda Smith and myself. The show is based on Makeda's book. We're in week 8 of our series, which is day 8 in her book, and having a great deep conversation, as you can tell here on this topic, because again, there's so much in this one short chapter, Makeda, that we're talking about. We talked about
Mhm.
breaking generational curses. We talked about being able to think about, you know, entrepreneurship and being able to survive and thrive in a time when the odds seemed against you, which leads us to the third thing. And based on what you just said, Makeda, the way you worded this in the book, I thought was interesting because
Mhm.
I use this phrase too, and I talk about when I got into the media business here in Mississippi, where I said
Mhm.
it just so happens that one of the people in the audience was Charles Evers, the brother of Medgar Evers. Hey, my mom is watching. Makeda, hey
Hey,
mom,
mom. Hey, mom.
good to see you, mom.
We love moms,
Yeah,
moms and grandmoms.
yeah. Where I say, I tell people when I'm normally telling the story, I say it just so happens Charles Evers, the brother of Medgar Evers, was in the audience of my speaking engagement and offered me an opportunity to do radio. And then I always say, if you believe in things just so happening, I bring that up because in the way you
Mhm.
worded this in this chapter, you said it just so happens that these that these brothers reached out to you. What was it like for you to think about that and where you were at then?
You know, that was my, like, okay, I've been in business like probably closer to 40. This is 35, 30, I think 37 years now.
Hmm.
So closer to 40. That was, I still remember that. Like, okay, what I'm trying to say is there's so many miraculous events that have occurred for me over the decades. But that one sticks in my brain because it was like my first conscious miracle,
Hmm.
because I was so stressed out. It was like, where am I going to, literally, I remember like, where am I going to get the money to pay my phone bill? And
Hmm.
if I can't pay my phone bill, my clients, like, it's going to impact my business. Folks are going to call
Right,
me and my phone's going to be off, and how
right,
I'm running a PR business and my little cell phone is off.
right.
I remember being so stressed. Like, I was stressed out the game. I was so stressed. I was just like, you know what? We just go. The phone just gonna be off, and we just gonna have to wait till the next money comes. I just had to let it go.
Yeah,
And literally, for those brothers to call me and say they were in town, that was like, I still remember it. It was like mind blowing.
yeah.
And like, again, this was back like 3 decades ago. We didn't have Cash App and Zelle
Hmm.
and all that stuff. Everything was cash.
Hmm.
So for some brothers who lived in Oakland to say, "Oh, we just happen to be in LA," and we, we, I had talked to them previously about them hiring me for PR. For them to call up and say, "We're in LA and we're wondering, can we bring you this cash by because we're in LA?" Like, that's what?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that was mind blowing to me.
yeah.
It literally blew my mind, and it humbled me, and it made me know that I am always going to be all right, that, my angels got me, that everything is really in divine order, that on some level I can relax and know and have faith.
Mm.
And I still remember that. And sometimes when my brain goes crazy and I wonder how I'm going to make it from A to B, I reflect back on a time when I really didn't know how I was going to make it from A to B, and I miraculously made it from A to B. So I'm
Mhm.
just like, okay, relax the brain,
Yeah,
go into prayer, go into stillness, and know that everything is okay.
yeah. I'm glad you said that. So for our audience and out there, Makita, who are find themselves sometimes in prison to fear. I think a lot of people are basically in a prison of fear
Yeah,
because every time they turn around, they're thinking the sky is falling. They're not going to be able to do this. This isn't going to happen. You know, um, what would you say to them about the importance of finding that kind of peace? Because I think that is the thing that robs so many people of appreciating what they do have anyway, because they're
yeah,
looking for some big thing, right? And the
yeah.
little thing about being able to pay their phone bill or being able to have lights in the house. What would you say to them about the importance of appreciating those little things?
You know, oh, it's so much I could say. So let me try to condense it because I've recently been having conversations with a few folks who are just like, like em- embodied with fear.
Yeah.
And the first thing, okay, it's a couple of things I want to say. Oh, thank you. Who's that? Thank
Earl
you.
says, thanks for your bravery doing a live show with
I
Wicked.
know because Cyrus just taxes my brain. Okay, so first of all, the world, the media, the matrix is coded with fear.
Hmm.
We are fed fear. We are fed fear through TV commercials. If you're watching Hulu and the commercial comes on, or whatever streaming platform commercial comes on, and they tell you about, oh, go get this shot, or oh, take this drug, but this drug is going to get you, it may cause you this, but you need this drug anyway.
Hmm.
That's feeding your subconscious with fear.
Hmm.
Everything is subliminal, and everything is fear. So once you're conscious that you're being fed fear, then you have to be conscious that you have to do something to combat that fear.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's really a very deep thing, because if you don't realize you're being fed fear, then you're not taking the antidote to fear. What's the
Hmm.
antidote to fear? The antidote to fear is realizing that the power is within you. And hopefully, it's not really about who you pray to or how you pray, but hopefully you realize there is a such thing as a higher power which fuels you. Okay, and I'm not trying to get too deep here, but in terms of combating fear, the first thing you could do is stop watching the news 24/7. So many people watch the news 24/7. The news is feeding your brain fear. If you're thinking about the news all day, you can't think about your personal beingness. Okay, so the first thing to do is really turn off the news. Like, you could check in with the news,
Hmm.
and truly, if even if you're on Facebook or you're strolling, you're going to get doses of the news. But there's so many people who really just listen to the news in the background all day long. My mother used to just keep the news on all day long. Like, you don't even think about it. And the news is feeding you fear. That's the first thing. So there's so many simple things that you could do to reprogram your brain. And once you start taking the small steps to reprogram your brain, you're going to become more conscious of the coincidences, which are miracles, which are happening in your life, which you can continue to embrace and feed them energy and become more conscious and aware of them. And it will change the trajectory of your days. And I don't know if I answered your question, Cyrus, or if I went off on too long of a
No, no,
tangent.
you did, and I love the comfort level that you're feeling. And speaking, no, I mean that does answer the question. It does bring me up to this question.
Did I do that? Where did that thumbs up come from? I don't know if my camera did that.
Oh, yeah. So, but it does bring up this question because it goes to the theme of movement we've been seeing from week to week in this book.
Okay.
Because none of this would have happened if you weren't doing the work.
Yeah. You have to do the work. I said, like, it's such a big conversation because
Yeah.
there's so much to it. But if you sit in fear
Hmm.
and don't move,
Yeah.
you're going to be sitting in fear. So movement and doing the work is like crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And it's work. It's not easy. I
Yeah.
mean, like I wake up every day and I do 30 minutes of breath work. I do 10 minutes of yoga. I do 10 minutes of bouncing on my trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's work. I get up most mornings and I'd be like, I could just sleep for another hour. Like, why am I getting up and breathing and doing all this stuff? But that's the work it
Yeah.
takes to keep my nervous system in a calm state so that I am not doused with fear every day because the fear is real.
Yeah.
But God is real. So which
Yeah.
one you going to embrace?
And that's so true. And that's why I think this message to me has such a bigger, there's so many big points to it, Makeda, because those brothers could not have called you if you hadn't done the work prior to that.
Exactly. That's so
No,
true.
you simply, and so that's the thing. You would not have gotten that call if you hadn't been doing the work.
That's so true. You're so good, Cyrus.
But no, it's not a big no. But,
That's such
but
it's
that's
so
the whole
true.
thing. But I said that to say this: our audience can't expect things just to happen for them if they're not doing the work.
Yeah, you have to do the work. I
Yeah,
mean, it's crazy, but it's why I created the Makeda method, and
hmm
it's why I teach breath work and deep stretch yoga and flow movement to like older adults, us seniors, because so many of us were raised in a generation of fear that all we know is fear. Like we're so used to fear, we don't even know nothing else. We're so used to stress, we don't even know. No, that's just who and what we are.
yeah, yeah.
So you have to do the work.
And that's it. And to look for those miracles, I tell you, Makita, this was such a good. You really got into this one. I like it.
Cyrus, you're pulling it out of me.
But no, and I hope our audience get this. So we would love for you to let us know in the comment section what is something that you've noticed you've gotten because you've done the work. And again, it can be something personally or professionally. And it can be a little thing. And I think that's the other big thing here, Makita. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Because those
No.
brothers probably didn't even realize what they were doing for you at the time.
No.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's also you can think about what is something that you thought was a coincidence, and now when you think about it and you reframe it as a miracle or as divine order, and feel how that feels in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great thing. Flying Over 50 at Any Age, everyone. The book's available here on Amazon. You can get it in paperback here for only $9.99. We have a highlight for you guys in the carousel, or you can get the Kindle edition here for $5.99. A perfect read as we're wrapping up National Reading Month as well. Makita, let them know how to stay connected with you.
You can find me at Flying Over 50 or at the Makeda Method across all your social media platforms, and those are also my websites.
Ellie, hello to you. Good to be able to see you over there on LinkedIn. Glad you can be able to join us. Makita, great show today. Looking forward to next week. And we have a special announcement. Hey, Moses, good to be able to see you also. I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier. Moses Maddox is joining us over there on IG. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And Makita and I have a special announcement we're announcing next week. So make sure you guys do stay tuned. Until next time, thank you so much for being with us, for flying over 50 at any age. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Blessings, everybody. Blessings.